different. Detroit is different. Detroit is different.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And you all see bundling up is in full effect because winter is here. And when winter comes in Detroit, you got to make sure you're ready for the cold. And so much more than the cold in preparation, you just got to prepare for everything in life. And today's guest is a guest that is taking a minute for this to happen, but definitely one of the guests I really look forward to having here because a dynamic story that started, but now we're going to finish it. And it's nothing better than being here at Detroit is Different. Before I even get into that, she actually provided some information from Langston Hughes. Beaumont to Detroit, 1943, Langston Hughes. Look at here. America, what you done. Let things drift until riots come. Now you're policemen, let your mobs run free. I reckon you don't care nothing about me. You tell them that Hitler is a mighty bad man. I guess he took lessons from the Ku Klux Klan. You tell me Mussolini's got an evil heart. Well, it must have been in Beaumont that he had his start. Because everything that Hitler and Mussolini do, Negroes get the same treatment from you. You Jim Crowed me before Hitler rose to power, and you're still Jim Crowing me right now, this very hour. Yet you say we're fighting for democracy. Then don't democracy include me? I ask you this question because I want to know how long I got to fight. I got to fight both Hitler and Jim Crow. From the collected poems of Langston Hughes, this was from none other than Mama Helen Moore. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Just so happy to be here with you, one of my children.
Definitely. As you are an elder in the Council of Elders, Queen Mother, in the honor of that, of what has been built here. And as I always say, an OG to the OGs.
All right.
So it's like you have played a hand in so many people's lives. And a lot of those people are little people, even to this day.
Little people still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Even helping out in the schools, helping the children read. The Let's Read program was given to the board by our group, Keep the Vote, No Takeover.
So we're going to definitely get into that. We definitely got to get into that and so much more, and just your relationship with school. This is a Sunday where we're recording. You were like, yo, I'm fresh out of the church I've been going to since you was one of them little homies.
Since I was 12.
12. All right, so let's start with your Detroit story. How many generations deep are you to Detroit? Are you first, second, third generation?
Third, probably fourth.
Wow. So
88 years old.
88. So you're 88, which that's an applause because she stayed moving and shaking and baking. It's still at 88. But beyond that, you're 4 generations deep. So that means that your great-grands came here. Where did they come from?
Well, they came from Tennessee, Newport, Tennessee.
Where is Newport, Tennessee?
In the middle of Tennessee.
Okay.
Near Knoxville,
Okay.
the biggest city around.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a slave. So I have his whole history of how he built the first black school for Newport, Tennessee children.
Okay. All right. Hold on. We about to get into that story already because that's so dynamic. As if that's generations before. I want to get into that school story, but it usually always starts with the migration patterns. And your family's here before the migration patterns.
Yeah.
What led them to come to Detroit?
Well, after slavery, North Carolina, my grandfather and his mother were released from slavery in the 1800s, almost the end of the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided to walk across the mountains of North Carolina, right next to Tennessee, and they stopped in Newport, Tennessee. And that's where I'm from. I came here when I was 3 years old. And he was a slave who built the black community in Newport, Tennessee. It's a long story, but the story is relevant to what we're dealing with now.
Let's uplift his name. What was your grandfather's name?
His name was John Rice.
Mr. Rice. So John Rice, and building this school. And this also shows like that context of a lot of times when people say enslavement was so long ago, it's within a reach of that same connection of your grandfather. We're sitting down having this conversation right now, 2025. So that relationship is there. And also the reliance of the skills trades, because him building a school, the intelligence of executing a school, and what was needed. How did your granddad get all these skill sets? More so, I know that was in that service, but the skill sets, and you combine that with the commitment to offer something to a community in
Yes.
Newport, Tennessee.
He was a little boy, about 7 years old, when he came to Newport, Tennessee, walked across North Carolina mountains with his mother. And when they got there, they had no money, they had no resources, but somehow they made it work. And as a little boy, he began to pick up coal off of the railroad tracks, and he sold it to the white people. He had a little wagon, and every day he would go to the railroad tracks, pick up the coal, and take it to them for them to get warm in their houses. And he built a business from that. And from that, he built other businesses in town when he got older. He went to a downtown where most Negroes were not really allowed. And he became friendly with the people he delivered coal to, folks that had the money. And so they sort of liked him. So he decided to use these white folks' races and build up for the black folks in town. So guess what he did? He sold them the coal. And he started making money.
So, all right. And now even more interesting story. And this just shows like the ingenuity, the know-how, learning how to be in spaces. But your grandfather starts off in the entrepreneurship, and this relationship, even through where racism stands, and I think that still stands today, the resourcefulness of black people, knowing what black people can do, and knowing if you have an asset still can put you in a space where, I don't want to say you can be relied upon, but through that transactional relationship, a relationship can start. So from gathering coal, having that know-how and skill set to do that, and then knowing that, okay, I can make something of this. He grows one business, and you say that grows into many more.
Many more. Building bricks, doing bricks and building downtown Newport, Tennessee. Became very close to several of the white slave owners. And he said to one of them one day, he says, I'd like to build a school for our people. So this one man and him were very close. And we had no schools, nothing. And so he said, I'd like to buy the land upon Crosby Pike. And he said, will you help me? So the slave master and the slave owner and the person that he was talking to, they were kind of friendly. And he said, you got to go to the county and you got to talk to them, because they're not going to let a slave buy any property. So he did. And as soon as he bought the property, he turned it over to my grandfather, who built the first black school in Newport, Tennessee.
All right. So now I want to take a look at just the times period for all Americans crossing from North Carolina to Tennessee. You're talking about the part of that Appalachian Mountain set, which even by foot today, and I mean, even if you like hiking and anything like that, it's not necessarily, you have to be very strong-minded, strong-willed, and have the physical attributes. So they're actually leaving North Carolina to Tennessee at a time where enslavement is active.
Well, it just turned, they were freed, but they were
Quote
told.
unquote.
They weren't told they were free.
So this is post-Civil War. And as we know, even with the whole celebration of Juneteenth itself, the message, it's not, there was no World Wide Web, there was no television.
No.
So even that message coming across clear, and you're staying definitely in states of the Confederacy.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
even more of a difficult dynamic at the time, quote unquote, post enslavement, but you still have these you have people in positions during this Reconstruction of influence, power. This is also like the roots of Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan. A lot of some of the most horrific parts of inhumanity that happened to our people happen in this period because of dealing with what happens. And your grandfather during this time is like, yo, I'm about to get a school for our people.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of the school? And how does he go about finding teachers and finding students? How does that happen? Because I'm guessing it also took boldness and courage for parents to say, okay, I'm going to safely make sure that this school exists, and I'm going to enroll my kid in this school.
Yeah, that school, I think the name of it's still there, by the way. They moved them out into the white neighborhoods when they integrated, and they kept the school in that neighborhood. And the children went across the street to the new school, the black kids. And so my grandfather, after doing all that, it wasn't over with yet. So he decided he's going to do some other things in the town. So he started going downtown, building up some of the downtown area. Some of the school, well, it wasn't schools, businesses down there. You will see on these businesses a stone with his name on when it was built in Newport, Tennessee, down by the railroad track. I go every year because we celebrate the 8th of August. Now, mind you, they were freed 8 months before, but they didn't know it. As soon as they found out, his mother grabbed his hand and they started walking across the mountains to Tennessee.
Wow.
So that's how it began.
All right. So also your great grandmother, like I say, making that trek across a mountain ridge at that time.
Have you seen the mountains in Tennessee? Smoky Mountains?
I have. In one of my iterations of life, I was a truck driver. So in truck driving, one of the routes we ran was like up and down the Appalachian, actually for Anheuser-Busch. So, you have a load of that beer on the back of that truck.
Yes.
And then like some of those mountains are like this steep where it's almost like, it's like straight down.
Straight down and way up.
Oh, yeah.
You can look over the top of the mountain and see the town. Looks like it's miles below.
Yeah. It's just for trucking school. Like you gotta, like most of like the jackknife, scary, pay attention, don't fall asleep on the road videos were the videos of people that drove that route.
Right.
And like, you can drift. And if you drift, it's gonna be you that could be the last drift you ever make in your life.
And then when you get to the top, you're sitting, we always stop at the top and look over. I don't know why we do that because I'm really afraid. And if it's raining or snowing, it's really bad.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's where I'm from.
And walk that. Okay. So Detroit, how did the relationship to Detroit come?
Okay, Ford Motor Company. Heard the stories. How the black folks came from the South, got on the railroad track, came on here to work for Ford Motor Company. My dad started working for Ford Motor Company. But this was after we lived in Newport, Tennessee.
Okay. So Tennessee, and I always find it unique because so many black folks are from Georgia and Alabama here. Tennessee, a lot of black folks from Tennessee went to Chicago, Milwaukee. They went a little bit more west. I don't know, for whatever reason. Knoxville, some of them, just from all these interviews over the years, even went even further east. And Ford was what brought your father here.
Yeah.
When did your dad make that decision to come, and what neighborhood?
Well, the word got around that, and we came to Detroit. He came here first, and then he came back and got us and brought us back to Detroit. We were the first black family in the white neighborhood on the west side of Detroit. And we went to the first one of the white schools, just our family, only the black people that lived in that neighborhood. And there was about 8 of us children that went to Columbia School.
Okay. So what neighborhood was that?
Well, it's on the west side. You know where Warren Avenue and where my church is, Carter Metropolitan on West Grand Boulevard and Warren. It was farther up going toward when you go to the Eastern Market and everything. It's farther up that way. And there was only one 4-family flat in the whole neighborhood now. And all of us blacks, there was 4 families in it. We lived in that one building. And all of us went to the same school. It was all white. Very interesting because the riot broke out while we were at that school.
And I'm guessing you're talking about the one in 43.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when we think of the rebellion, we're thinking of the rebellion in 67.
Yeah.
There are like a series of so much more information about what was happening in 43. Hence, Detroit was just already looked at. But talk a little bit about what it was like going to school at that time and what happened.
Columbia School was one of the schools we went to later. But that school that we first went to, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but anyway, it was just about, I'd say, 4 blocks from our house. You had to be careful when you went there. And when the riot broke out, we were stuck in the school. The principal brought us to the door. He dismissed the classes, and he told us we could not leave. We didn't know what was going on. I was like 5 or 6 years old. And so we're standing at the door with nobody coming to get us, and a riot's outside, and the white folks were out there with their guns and their bats and anything else, because they knew that when we walked to school, there was black children in the neighborhood. And so my father found out about it when he came home from work from Ford, that we weren't home. It was like 6 o'clock in the evening, and the doors are chained, and we're standing there, my family and other families that were in the flat. We're all looking out all that time. School's out like 3:30, and it's like 7 or 8 o'clock. We're all looking for somebody to come and save us, and these folks are out there ready to kill us, all these white folks. So finally I saw somebody coming down the street. We were looking out, and it was my father and the people that lived in the flat. The men that lived in the flat and the older children came down the streets with their guns on their shoulder, and we were watching all this. Now, mind you, we're young. We don't know what's going on. And so they came to this where we were, and they pulled the guns on these white folks. They had a session going on there, and they ran them away, and the principal opened the door and let us go home. But he said, you can't go down the streets that you come to school. You have to go around several blocks because they'll be out there rioting and you'll be caught in it. So my dad and the people in the apartment building walked us all the way around the neighborhood to get us back home. And that's what I remember. And it was on from that time on as me, as a person that really working for our people. I never forgot that. Only thing that happened that made me really shook me up was when we got our report cards. Now, mind you, we're only blacks. Now you got white young teacher that came to the school after we were in her class, and she gave out the report cards. And she gave me my report card. Now, I'm not bragging on it, but a lot of people know that I got a brilliant, from going from Detroit Public Schools, Commerce, Cass Tech, and all that, up to going to law school. A lot of people don't know that. They don't know I went to law school. But anyway, I thought that I did pretty good, and everybody else did. Guess what happened? I got the report card, and it was an E on there. Now, back in them days, it meant you flunked. And it was from one class. So I take it home to my parents, and they said, what happened to you? And I said, that's not my grade. There's a white girl in the class. I believe they gave me the wrong grade. Her name was Helen. And I think they gave me Helen's grade. So being like it was back then, riots and all, my father and mother said, look, we know you and we know how brilliant you are. You're going to have to just accept it. So they didn't go fighting for me like I do for the kids now. So they signed the report card. I'm mad as hell as a little girl. I go to school, and immediately when the door opened to my classroom, I took that report card and went up to the new teacher that was white and said, you gave me the wrong grade. I've always been like that. So she says, what's your name? I said, Helen. She said, there's another Helen in this class, too. That little girl over there. I said, that little girl is so dumb and stupid. You gave me her grade. Now, that was back in 40s. She gets all the lessons out, and she looks at it. She says, I want to apologize. Now, back then, for a white person apologizing to a little girl, that was something. And I'm looking at her, and she says, I gave you the wrong grade. Now, we go through the day. I couldn't wait to get out of school and get home. So I'm running down the street with my report card. My dad and mama's home. He's home from work and everything. I said, see, I told you that was not my grade. They said, well, we knew that. I said, but you didn't do anything to come and help me. So here's my new grade. They said, we don't know what we're going to do with this child.
I can imagine. And
I remember that.
And that world of advocacy then, and definitely I can imagine the 40s. I mean, just it's already a tough dynamic being a child talking to an adult, let alone at that time black and the white dynamic. And then you put the timing in. Yeah, that took a lot of guts because it's
and I'm about 7 years old at that time.
Yeah, that's a lot of guts.
And so the struggle continues. So that started it off.
All right, so from there, you mentioned already commerce school. Wait, before that, I want to frame some of the rebellion then. So similar to a lot of tensions that exist, and I would say that the tone for tension, as we saw not long ago with the response of the murder of George Floyd, that tone for racial tension in America, it doesn't take much to amplify it, just because of what exists in the history of the nation of America. So you put that in this pressure cooker that always has been existing in America, and we can act as if it's not pressure in the cooker, but sometimes it just takes a little bit. So the 43 rebellion, and Lord knows I'm not the scholarly historian, but similar to a lot of incidents, there is a he say, she say over black man, white woman, where black man from this angry white mob is thrown over the Belle Isle Bridge.
Oh, I was there.
And this spawns out with a lot of black folks saying she lying. And that she lying moment that echoes throughout history has even a history that goes even to media, like the whole concept of the first major motion picture hit, Birth of a Nation, is built under the idea of the Ku Klux Klan being this strong for justice vigilante group, like you would think like a Marvel movie like the Avengers, because these black men that are enslaved and now free are just going throughout the South raping white women. Like this is like an arc of a story, to the point where Birth of a Nation is a movie that is shown by the president. Now I'm giving this to even lead to what happened here in 43, what happened with Emmett Till, and so many other instances over time. Hence, even me to this day, nothing is scarier than me, elevator, white woman. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I would rather get out, because it's like, I don't need none of this drama right now. 40-year-old black man I wouldn't want that type of relationship as when people talk about just the fear of the black man, but these same fears black men have. And that tension just undergirds like so much of what America exists. So that spawns out where a lot of the black communities like, look, we're not taking this. Even though the numbers of black folks at the time were nothing like the numbers of black folks today or even in 67, it still was one of those things is we not about to take this. We left the South to get away from this, and we ain't coming up here to deal with it.
Yeah, and I was at that 67 rebellion. I was on Virginia Park and 12th Street,
You were right there.
right there in the middle of it.
Right there. Once again, in the mix. So now let's talk a little bit about you and school relationship. You mentioned Commerce. Commerce is a high school that my Aunt Shirley went to. Shout out to Commerce. Commerce is one of those schools that connects to a lot of learning in the business space,
Yeah.
but you also mentioned CT. What was it like in both those school
Well,
journeys?
Cass Tech and Commerce were joined together.
Oh, at the time they were
Yeah.
joined.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell the Commerce story then.
So I would have to go across the little tunnel they had to go to classes for Commerce. And sometime I had to go to Cass because they didn't have the classes. Commerce was business school, and they didn't have the classes there. So it was interesting, but it was predominantly white at that time. And there was also a riot going on at that time.
Mm.
And so what happened is we ended up closing down the school. They did. And I walked from Buchanan and McKinley, where we lived, down all the way to Grand River and all the way to school. And I kept going during the winter time and everything while the schools were closed.
Well, you were definitely committed because I know where that's at.
See,
And I know that journey.
downtown. Hmm.
And Commerce is one of those schools that also, how would I put, Detroit plays a role in American history so well, like through these discussions. So wartime economy, a lot of women joining the workforce, similar to Lewis College Business. Shout out to the Ponders family, what that was. But that connection carried over and continue from like a commerce school. So people like my aunt would learn skill sets in being in an office because offices function with so many other workers, especially that industry. That blue collar work needed a lot of white collar work and different things. Is like when I interview my bus, like the operators of phones, the patching phones and different skill sets like that. Here we go. Classic typing. Like my mom, and I'm sure you learned a lot of real typing, which
Oh yes, all of it.
yeah, like really know how to place your hands on the keys and all that stuff.
Type real fast.
Yeah. It's like words per minute was one of them things, but you would pick up these skill sets, key punching, and early on computer programming. These were skills from Commerce, but I never knew that Commerce and Cass were connected at the time.
Just a bridge. Some of us that went to Commerce did go to Cass too.
Okay. All right. After Cass Tech.
Well, let me tell you something about Commerce and Cass Tech. This little black girl, she kept moving along. And guess what? With all those white kids and everything, she became the president of the class.
Wow.
I never tell anybody that.
What
I got books
class?
For 12th graders.
Oh, no. What year?
Oh, 50, was it 54?
Class of 54. You were the Cass Tech president.
I was the 12B, and then in the 12A, 12A, let me see, 12B, I was president, and in the 12A, I was the vice president. Came more, people looking at me, sitting there, all the pictures they were taking and everything. So yes, I was. I got the book at home.
I'm see this is the rich history that you get with the Detroit is different. Some of that context to know where these stories go.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was that election like?
Oh, it was something else. But when I give you the Detroit College of Law statement when I graduated, I'll just admit I had 4 children, taking care of them. My husband and I were separated, and I ended up going to law school.
Okay.
And guess what?
What?
I was the president of my law school. I got all that at home, but I never talk about it. You know why I don't talk about it? Because at that time, I was being thrown out of meetings when I was fighting for our children to get an education at that time. They were throwing me out of meetings, taking us to jail and all that. And I didn't want to make them think that I was just turning my back on the cruelty that they were doing. So the day I graduated from law school, it was all in the papers.
Mm.
Helen Moore graduated from law school. So that night, well, next night, I had to go to a school board meeting. Now, mind you, they had just arrested me, taken me out, and beaten up our people and everything because they did not want us to keep doing what we were doing for our children. So I walk into the meeting, which is almost downtown, when it was on Woodward, when the building was on Woodward. Yeah.
That was back when Detroit Public Schools was in property Detroit Public Schools owned.
That's right. So I go in the meeting. Now, mind you, they had just thrown me out of the meetings and done a lot of other stuff to all the people that were with us. And I walk in, and guess what? The school board.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here she comes. She's got a law degree. And they just beating us up, throwing us out. And I walk in. I had two of my children. I had to bring them to the meetings with me because I didn't have a babysitter. And I'd sit them in the back. There was a table back there, and they would do their homework while I did what I had to do. And I looked up, Miss Moore, do you have anything to say? I said, I certainly do. Walked up to the front of the room with the board members sitting there looking at me and smiling and grinning. I said, I just want the people here to know I'm the same Helen Moore last week that you threw out and beat up our people. I haven't changed just because I have a law degree. Thank you very much for recognizing me, and I'm not going to change. And I went and sat back down.
Okay, and with that, I want to unpack a little bit of this relationship with school. 4 children, so kudos. Of the 4, what was the relationship like being that parent looking for school, and how did that reframe how you saw that journey of what schools offer and what students need?
Back then, in those days, my children went to Barton. I'm back at Barton now tutoring. My children went to Barton. They went to Drew, and they all went to Cass Tech. Does that tell you something? And I would not let them take any of the tests that they would give because I thought they were racist. You know how they give you those tests during the semester to see how you're doing well with your achievement and everything. I went over the tests. Very much racist. So I wouldn't let them take them.
Wow.
So guess what happened? They, principals and everything, got together and said, she's not, we don't know what our kids are doing. She's not letting them take the test. So the word went out, and they started trying to hold my kids out from going to Cass because you got to take that test to go to Cass. So I told them, I changed my mind. I'm going to let them take the test this semester. The children took the test, and it was so far ahead of all the other children. This is noted. You probably read about it. That there was nothing they could do. They had to let my children into Cass.
So the standardized testing that you speak of,
racist.
There's an entry exam to get into Cass Tech, and as time went on, that same entry exam is for the programs at King High School and also Renaissance High School.
That's right.
And also other standardized tests. So like the MEEP test as time went on. But when I was younger, I remember the CAT test, the California Achievement Test.
You got it.
And these tests were valuations to determine the intelligence or academic achievement of students that will have ties to funding for a lot of the schools. That's how it was drafted up. Now, since then, and even at that point in time, many studies were always known that a lot of the standardized tests, like really, this is a Kari Frazier statement, any institution in America is structurally racist because it's not designed for black people. So let's just start there.
You got it. You got it.
So these the way that the way that the questions are written, the framework, the understanding of it, as I often say, I mean, how many times do I tell you all, Inner Detroit is different. America's designed for white men with businesses and property. And the further you get away from that, the design, it's not going to work for you the same. So with this, a lot of times when you uplift this, I think white folks sometimes can get defensive and say, well, I'm not this. And it's like, I'm not talking about you, Steve. I'm talking about this institution that you benefit from, that incepted and you uplift. And some of the uplifting of this is implicit and complicit, and it's explicitly targeted and extractive and destructive in communities like mine. Hence, the black mind is a big part of that, especially the young black mind.
Well, to tell you the truth, we can skip all this part in between. Now we're right back at it.
Exactly.
I bought all the notices they send me on my email. I think they have me targeted. And it says to me, Linda McMahon is going to be the next person over public schools. And she does not like you black children. So she is going to do everything in her power to get rid of you. And she does not want you to have a public school. Her and the president are going to change it into private schools. And black children's schools will not be accepted into those schools. I'm telling you this because you all probably don't get the things I get. I get from my people all over the country. Stop Linda McMahon from privatizing public schools. We've already sent more than 42,000 letters as part of our campaign to stop Trump's reality TV cabinet. Now we're joining forces with RISE, R-I-S-E, a student-led organization building power on campuses across the country to escalate the fight against Trump's dangerous nominee for the Department of Education, Linda McMahon. And most people don't know this. I have friends all over the country, and I would say all over the world after being out there this long. I get this stuff. And I'm so glad you invited me to your program because now I'm letting the world know, and the citizens of Detroit, we're in another struggle.
And I want to frame that right kind of in our connection, in our relationship. And I do want to pick up with one point, but we'll get back to that. But even the Keep the Vote No Takeover movement, which puts my parents' connection to you. And rest in peace, my mom, Jan Frazier, and Greg Frazier, my father.
Totally.
And that was
Dexter Elmhurst.
Something that is very key and pivotal that I still don't think that is often contextualized the right way. And eventually, through Detroit is Different, I want to do some pieces about this. So your interview and snippets from this and more uplifting will help. But I see this as a larger concept. So whether it's Linda McMahon, whether it's Betsy DeVos, whether it's John Engler, whether it's
You got it.
I mean, it's that game. Guess who? Whatever that may be, it's the threat is the empowering of black minds in institutions to empower themselves. So I see a lot of the Keep the Vote No Takeover movement and what happened with emergency management of our schools as a direct impact and connection to when I graduated 2001. So as I was going to Detroit public schools during that time, there was a superintendent, David Snead. David Snead moves forward a bond that's $1 billion bond, meaning that Detroiters voted to say, let's improve and let's invest further in our schools. And at the time, Detroit in that 90s era was one of the largest school districts in America.
Yes.
Definitely in Michigan. So the bonding capacity was not like out of this world. It was actually fair when you look at how many schools were throughout Detroit public schools. So I often talk about high schools and knowing communities through high schools. And there were like a strong about 30 high schools that were committed in grounded in communities for generations. And it was so many elementary schools and middle schools that it was overabundance.
Yeah, like 200,000 children.
200,000 students. The discussion of what charter schools, because this is really when we talk about privatizing, was a very provocative issue and vouchers for them. And there was even still at the time parochial schools kind of existing throughout Detroit. And the movement of what happened with public schools during a time when John Engler, and I don't look at John Engler with the hate that so many do, because he's just executing tasks that many others would do. So John Engler immediately starts taking a liking and interest in what's happening with Detroit Public Schools when Detroit Public Schools start getting money. So instead of evaluating schools, and this is the moving target with evaluating schools. Schools are sometimes evaluating upon attendance, how many students you have in it. And then when you can't say this is a bad school because it doesn't have enough people, you say it's a bad school because the test scores are bad. And then when you say the test scores are bad, you say that this is a bad school because you don't have the right teachers. And then when you say that it's a bad school because you don't have the right teachers, you say because you don't have the right resources. Basically, all signs point to Detroit Public Schools not being able to be run by Detroiters. So during that time, Governor Engler steps in and appoints an emergency manager. And this is the first time at a young age where I'm not really understanding it, but it's introduced. So emergency management is basically saying that it's too inept. You don't know what you're doing. We're going to appoint a person to do this. And this supersedes our voting capacity because we voted for a school board to make these decisions on behalf of the voters. But the thought process is basically the governor stepping in and saying that the decisions made by Detroiters are not the decisions that should be made, and we're going to appoint a person to be made. That was John Engler first appointing, and his name is just so infamous throughout Wayne State's campus for like not supporting the Martin Luther King Day celebrations and so many other things, that the relationship between racism and Wayne State. And I don't blame him, David Adamany, for being so racist, because it's back to the institution itself is so racist. And I'm not dismissing his acts either, because back to that building you were talking about on Woodward, at that point, Detroit Public Schools, even to this day, own so much property. Detroit Public Schools would conduct Detroit Public Schools in Detroit Public School buildings. One of the first deals that David Adamany executes is a property that was the school center building is now sold to Wayne State almost for pennies on the dollar. And that is where a lot of other properties are sold from Detroit Public Schools to Wayne State during this time. And there were many people that we uplift. Like Damon Keefe actually signed this. And shout out, I'm a Northwestern Colt, right? So it's not like I'm taking a stab at Damon Keefe, but there were so many black folks in support of this because I believe they were believing the media too about the schools are bad because of these four things that go back without looking at this with the crucial analysis. And the whole time through, now I understand one of the key soldiers in this, that was you. And it was a movement that was built. So it's you. It's rest in peace, Marie Thornton,
Yes.
Mama Joanne Watson,
Yes.
Agnes Hitchcock,
Your mother.
and so many others, where these school board meetings become something that many people are paying attention to and not even really understanding that this is really about compromising the vote, because it's this institution that's stepping in. And of that $1 billion bond, in a matter of, I don't know, I would say like about 5 years, you end up with a debt for this same school system, as it's now given back to a Detroit Public Schools. Now we're functioning in a debt that was created by a person appointed, well, multiple people appointed. It was Kenneth Burnley. It was, I forget the lady's name. Robert Bobb comes in, and Robert Bobb is another one of these public figures with Bill Cosby saying that back to black people don't know what to do. They don't know how to lead people. So these are a better group of black people that know how to lead people. And during this time and all of this chaos, you have a public school system that starts. Even a charter school system that definitely moves forward, even to the point where Detroit Public Schools has an EAA movement where it's a charter through Detroit Public Schools, led by our now, I guess, last year, Mayor Mike Duggan. You know what I'm saying? So like all of these things are happening in a
By design.
fight that is deconstructing black empowerment and leadership, because along with the bonding, as I had my interview with Kwame Kenyatta at the time, that was when an African Center school movement is running concurrent throughout Detroit Public Schools. So I graduate with African American literature as my English text. So I'm reading Maya Angelou, I'm reading Amiri Baraka and things like that. And from my even Kwame Kenyatta interview, I mean, these books and these professors were like stamping like 200,000 students are these same, Huckleberry Finn and Racist Tales, as far as I'm concerned, that we've been reading for forever, almost stamped, and 200,000 books are always being purchased. But now it's going over to Angela Davis. It's going to Maya Angelou. It's going to Amiri Baraka. It's going to all these black writers. And you get this $1 billion to go to these black folks. That was a power movement that I think had to be shook up.
Well, you have to think about African-centered education. By now, all the schools were supposed to have it. Instead, it's less than we started off with.
Very much so.
And one of the schools, what was that school that burned up accidentally?
Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, right in my neighborhood. It's right over here on Oakman. Right now, it's going to be where Detroit Horsepower will be doing their equestrian farm park.
By accident, and nobody knows what happened.
And that was a heck of an institution. When they talk about the brother that read that, I mean, I've done so many interviews with people that graduated from there and talk about how much they love their experience there. And then Adjoa, or Mama Nefertiti, Mama Watson's daughter, as people would know, was another one of those key leaders in education there too.
Yeah, we've done a lot of history going back. I'm sitting here listening to you. I'm glad you picked up all this stuff, because I wonder, when we have our meetings, how many of our folks really know all the things we know to keep the vote people. Only about, let me say, mostly 20 people come from all over the city, but we're the ones that's been out there all these years. Very few new people come into the group. And that's what we're working on now. So we're kind of, I don't say dismiss, because we're going to the meetings and doing our meetings on the phone and all that, but we're kind of upset with our people. Because they do not realize that they are making sure, especially with this new fool coming in, president, that we don't get the education that we deserve, that we've been working on. I'm going to tell you, it's a secret. The reason that they are now going to try to really, really destroy it, they destroyed it before, we bought it back. They really want to destroy it now, because guess what? This is our secret that we keep. I don't know if any of you go to Selma, Alabama with us during the summer, during March, and been doing it for years. They are afraid of us now. I'm saying things that only our people know. The reason they're afraid of us is because some of those little children in the South, like Selma and Birmingham and places like that, we keep in touch, are so brilliant, and they're just now finding out. Their parents, perhaps, were educators, are educators, and they found out that the children are so brilliant, some of the teachers, that they are in college. I got to keep a lot of this secret, because they're going after us now because they're worried about us catching up with them. But those children are in college, and some of them have graduated college at the age of, get this, 12 years old, and they're all black. The fear is out there. So the things you see on television, like what the new president is going to do, it's by design. They still want to make sure that our children are stupid and ignorant and not able to learn the lessons in the schools that they built. But we all know that it's been out there, and those of us that go to Selma every year and talk to all the people that are really involved, we all know that their biggest fear now is that, even like in Detroit, when we know that the school system isn't up to par, and we're working to bring it that way, even in Detroit, we found out that some of our children, some of us go into the classroom, are brilliant, but they haven't been treated that way. I got a little boy in the 4th grade. He reads the encyclopedia, and they told me when I got him that he was not a good student. He was falling asleep all the time in the classroom. So I got him. And I said, I'm just looking at you. When I have you in my class, you are reading all the time. You can read? Yes. I said, well, I'm in the library. Go get me a book that's the hardest book you have to read. Now, I'm sitting there smiling, because they didn't told me this little boy is dumb and stupid. That's true. He goes over there to the encyclopedia shelf. He pulls out a book, and I'm over there laughing. I said, okay, I know what they're talking about. This little boy don't know what he's talking about. He brings it to me, opens it up, and starts reading. Didn't miss a damn word.
Wow.
Fourth grader, who they say is stupid, and he's not. He's falling asleep. He's falling asleep because he's bored. He's bored.
And I guess that leads me to this question. With so many interactions with students and your children, what are the elements you think that are foundational in providing a student that atmosphere and that place to learn?
Here's what it starts at home. And guess what? We're in trouble. 70% of our parents, they don't want you to know this, in Detroit public schools, never finished. And the other parents are carrying the burden, and their children are doing very well, even in Detroit and down south. I meet with these people once a year, talk about this all the time. It's a secret, but it's not going to be a secret any longer because that new president is going to bring in this, whatever her name is, Mac Mahone, and they're going to try to destroy the whole system again.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely being looked at, as we know, in some
children.
of the stories, that just the Department of Education itself, which, rest in peace, Jimmy Carter, that passed, is one of the foundations of America that comes after the fact. And also, I want to frame American education itself, being I'm a Northwestern guy, my mom graduated from Central. The system is an offshoot of looking to assimilate agrarian workers into an industrial economy. So the concept of public schools themselves was more of a concept of basically the barons of industry, the Carnegies, the Van Burens, the Rockefellers, the Henry Fords, saying that we need to take this person that worked on the farm, primarily a lot of white folks, because black folks were so much more skilled because we were enslaved and we were conducting a lot more of the work. And we need to get productivity out of these people because these people were like dying in coal mines and industrial lines. So if we can teach them something, hence that's why so many schools are designed like factories, then we can get an industrial worker. So that's where, like, I guess the question of today, understanding that it may take more personal development, and you talk about that starting at home, how should a parent even look at, even if they are a person that did not finish their schooling because they checked out, because they weren't necessarily checked in? How are you navigating making that decision of what school to commit to?
We're so busy waking up the sleeping giant. That's who you talk about. They're not into it. All they're doing is trying to survive. And I'm going to say something that's going to make people angry. This drug thing, and it is drugs, is killing our kids. Sometimes they come to school and you smell it all in their clothes and everything. We never get to see their parents. And then the kids come to me in my class when I'm tutoring and tell me they waited up all night for their mother to come in. Something is wrong, and we're not seeing what causing our children to be the way they are. We got to wake up. It's not the children, it's the parents.
I definitely, fresh off of the stats being in my head from State of Black Detroit, that I've been doing for some years with Yusuf Shakur, the average income in Detroit, the mean income, is about $35,000 a year.
That's right.
So that's about $16.50 an hour. So, and the average household is actually going to be a mother probably with 2 or 3 children. So making that money, and the arduous hours, as I look at, getting high, that's another thing that I think is a part of American culture, period. Drugs in America are hand in hand, especially when the largest industry in America is the medical industry right now. And coping, especially when we look at what's happened in this wave of opioid addiction that has gone down in many other communities, but it looks like they're saying is rising, especially when it comes to homicides in Black communities.
Yeah.
Shout out to New Detroit and what they're doing of, racism is a medical epidemic as well, because so many Black people, specifically like Black men, kind of in my age range, like 40s to 50s, are dying of opioid overdose.
Yeah.
And this is like through pills, and heroin as well. This wave of what exists and the escapism through drugs is that reality because of that extreme poverty that so many Detroiters are dealing with. I think that kind of is hand in hand, as you can, I guess, one of the biggest sights seen, as most parents, I believe, want to provide the best opportunities for their kids, but even just the way that so many students clamor to the food provided in school.
Yes. Yes. All of it is by design. And if we don't wake up the sleeping giant, we are the sleeping giant. Once you wake us up, we're on. And that's what they're afraid of. And that's what they're going to kill the school system, where we're trying to make it better because we don't think it's good enough. And they're saying, oh, some of those folks are catching on. Some of those kids are outdoing our children. And that's behind. You don't hear this. But because we're so involved all over the country, especially down south, like in Selma and everything, we talk about these things and we have secrets that never come out to the public. They are afraid that our children are going to excel their children because they're 12 years old. And check it out.
So,
And they're graduating from college.
So with that, as you talk about the awakening, and that's something to grow from in your years of organizing, because you've been organizing actually since you was 5, it sounds like. So in your years of organizing, what have been those things that have connected to people most, especially our people? What has woke us up most?
When they get too tough on certain people, certain groups like our group, shows up in the news, and the people that are supportive and those that are not supportive begin to wake up and say, wait a minute, those people are trying to help our children. They've been out there a long time. Why are we sitting at home and not coming out to help them? I'll give you an example. Remember Joanne Watson? I know you do.
My godmother, rest in peace.
She and I were so close.
Very much so.
Yeah, and people didn't know that, but let me tell you this. Joanne got word of, she just got tired of us being thrown out of meetings, especially me, because she and I were that close. Throwing out of meetings and folks not doing what they're supposed to do for their children. That the last time they threw me out of a meeting was 4 years ago. And so the reason I was allowing them to do this, it came from Coleman Young and the people that supported us that you all didn't know anything about. We met every week. You do not know the people that were really behind us and were pulling us together. They were all Black and they were all involved. And some of you thought they were our enemy. They weren't. So Joanne Watson was one of those people. And she just got tired of me being thrown out. So she called me up and she says, this got to stop. So she says, I'm organizing and we're going to get all the people those are sitting down not doing anything, because we're all tired of, every time we look on the news, you're being thrown out. I didn't tell her that Coleman Young told me to keep being thrown out and act up, because if you don't, they don't print it. Think about it. Helen Moore is crazy, nutty woman, but they printing all this stuff that she's doing, and it's out there in the public. That's keeping the fight going on. So she says, I'm organized, and I want you to come to the board meeting. You're always there anyway. And when I call you up, you stand next to me and you don't say a word. Joanne organized the city. It was people there that I couldn't get out. The auditorium, go back and pull it up, was full. And then it was time for her to speak. She was on the agenda. She said, come with me. She said, this is your last time of being beat up and thrown out of meeting. She said, stand here. Don't you open your mouth. And the message was, and all these people came from all over the place. Some some I hadn't seen in years. They were all behind her. Auditorium was full. And she made her speech, and she says, you put your hands on her one more time. You see who's here. And some of the people are well known. They had to come out because Joanne told them to. And she said, you will regret it. And so we all walked off and we sat down. They didn't throw me out of no, think about it. You've seen it on the news.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't throw me out of no more meetings. But then when I got with Joanne, I said, Joanne, you messed up our strategy. She said, what did I do? I said, the reason I was thrown out all these years and acting out was to draw attention to what was happening in the school. I said, you helped put this strategy together. She said, we just got tired of you being thrown out, going to court and all that stuff. So that's what happened, and things changed, okay?
And as that changes, I would also say just staying connected with young people also connects you to Dexter Amherst Center.
Oh, yeah.
Another initiative that's been near and dear to your heart. I remember Dexter Amherst Center reopening under Dr. Ward. He's passed away at this time. Our Ward years ago. My sister Dar Frazier ran a program there at the time. Dar Frazier at the time.
Yeah,
So,
your mother was right in there with us all the time.
and Dar Cohen
Yeah.
currently. But she ran a program there years ago, and that was another reopening. And you've advocated so much for that space. As my mom definitely supported that space. Mama Neb did. Shout out Mama Neb,
Yeah.
Victor Gibson, many others organizing and looking to pour into what could happen. And now so much is already the action of bringing that place back together, and it's named in your honor.
Yeah.
So
I was surprised, really.
So talk about the rec center as we get to a close and what that means in the life of a child as well, the school and spaces for students, and then also just executing the programmings and tutoring and summer work and looking at play being something that's instrumental in the growth and development of a child as well.
Well, it's on because people don't know the contract includes us before they named it after me. When we drew up the contract, we put in the contract that there must be a room in there totally for the community, which we would be in charge. I'm talking about Helen Moore and the people that were there before on the board and everything, that we would run our programs in that center at no charge. Now, see, when we ran out of money, it was supposed to be closed and torn down. That's when I called the mayor in. And that's when we had that session where he said he'd never been in the center before. I'm sitting there with all these community people. And he said that. And he said, can I look around? And he went and looked around. He came back and I said, well, he said, I'm going to help you. And that's how it got started because we had run out of money. And the person that ran the center, he had cancer so bad that he would even come in and I'd have to try to help him, maneuver around the building and everything.
Yeah.
And so that's how it all began. But we were about to lose that center. We were running out of money. Because when they came over there to give us our new contract, we don't know who these people were. They came in and they looked around and they said, there's violations all over this place. I said, but we've been in this building for a long time. They said, well, you can't get approval. That's what really happened.
Yeah. And also, I want to uplift Fred Durrell, Councilmember Fred Durrell, because he's been on that journey
Totally with us.
as well throughout the arc of what's happened there.
That's right.
So with that, you talk about what's happening next, waking everyone up. What do you see that being as we get to a close? And you said that it's going to take people, I'm paraphrasing you, to I guess, for the impact to hit them more. And then as people look to organize, what would be your advice? What would be the game, as I always say, that you could give about that person that when they wake up, how do they get active in organizing?
Well, the first thing I would say is it's too many little small groups.
Hmm.
I have to say that because you cannot get them to actually, when you call them or send them the message, come to keep the votes meeting. It's urgent. You'll get a few people, but you won't get all that you need to get because we have so many small groups and they are in allegiance to their own selves. But there's got to be a big group like in the old days that we had. When we called people together, I remember we would call people together and go downtown and have our meetings down in what used to be the place where all the groups used to meet. And they tore it down now. That place would be packed, always. We got to go back to that. We have so many different little groups, and they're not interested in the other groups. How you make an answer this? How do we get all these little small groups together at one time to concentrate on education, concentrate on freedom, and concentrate on who they are and knowing who they are? Some of us don't know who we are. We are brilliant. If we ever sat down and got involved in what's going on in the world, I'm not talking about Detroit. I'm talking about Africa and all of it. We are part of it. And see how we can bring our people to a point in their history that will put them in the place they should be, because some of us recognize who we are, but some of us don't. We ain't nobody. We ain't no good and everything. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of us who know who we are, and that's why they're always after us to try to destroy us. And this time, with this man getting in there, the first thing they did send me was this woman, we gonna get you. She gonna come in and she gonna take away the school system. She gonna be over the school system.
So with that being said, it's like I'm almost looking to you for what's worked before. And I do think that some of those conditions are the same. Shout out to Keith Bennett, like he says, because one of the things that, the poverty's always been here, but now it feels through this lens of individuality. I think people feel a little bit more isolated and on an island by themselves with these conditions, and a sense of shame about that. And I'm not saying that didn't exist years ago, but I believe that breaks some of the collectiveness around it, and those real life conditions of what's going on around coming together. It can be difficult, and there are many groups. There are many ideologies. There is what problem is the biggest problem to address first. I personally think that there are enough challenges in our community where we can all take up different causes, but also be aligned around value sets that are the value set at key is heightening the quality of life of our people to move forward. So pouring into children is very instrumental. And it's also, like me, it's so many people our age that are choosing not to have children. And this is a bigger discussion in America, not just Black America, but just
in my
across.
family, two have children, two don't. So
yeah, because the thought process is, okay, children, the cost of bearing a child, what that looks like, the arc of how that sustains, which I think this is an American discussion too. So some of what this is will be uncharted territory, but I still do believe that some of that song will play on the same notes. So that's why it's been very fruitful just to get some of what you're uplifting here today. And I'm going to definitely encourage some people to come out and check for me to, I'm going to pull up. I'm going to pull up and be at some meetings, and I got some of this stuff, media is my thing, and we can,
well, there's a meeting coming up Tuesday, a school board meeting. We put it out there, but hardly nobody comes. It's the same ones of us from Keep the Vote that come to the meetings. And I look around. I sit in the second row in front, so I'm looking around all the time to see if any of the meetings that I go to and try to say to the people, you guys are coming out to the school board meeting. I look around to see if any are there, and it's very few.
So this is what I'm gonna do, because I gotta cut this up. I'm gonna put this up, and then I'm gonna let you know when this will post. It's not gonna post by this Tuesday, but once I post it, it'll be leading up to something in that call to action, and we're gonna see what traction I can get. I get a little bit of traction here in the social world, and let's see if this can lead to some people and getting more active as they understand the larger scope of this discussion, and in understanding that scope of this discussion, what it's meant for me, because I do believe that so much of who I am and where I am and what I love about the city and myself is what socially I connected to during that school age, that environment, having that pulse of what's happening throughout the city. It directly connects to what I got from these schools.
Well, I'm just going to put the word out. What you just said is on time. Guess what? Our children have nobody but us.
There we go. All right. So now I got to ask you the classic Detroit is different questions as we close out. Your very first car.
Mercury.
Okay. All right. What color was it?
Yellow and red. It was stupid.
Okay, yellow and red. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
my dad-
Ketchup and mustard.
My dad built, well, it was a family car.
Okay.
My dad had it custom made and all that stuff.
Okay, all right. It sounds like it may be kind of cool. Where's the first place you went when you were the person with it?
First place was when he was teaching me how to drive, and I started driving so fast. He said, "I'll never get in the car with you no more."
Your first ride, it took a while for your next ride.
It's the truth too. I was just driving like I knew what I was doing. He was hollering. It's the truth.
That's hilarious. All right. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson.
Yeah.
You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
What song would I play? It had to be a religious song with me being a choir.
What? Okay.
Choir. It was me being choir director. So let me see. I don't know. No, I know so many songs. God Will Take Care of Us.
Okay. I'm with it.
Okay. And Amazing Grace.
Okay. All right. I like it. We're going to leave on some thoughtful, high spirits. And the last question. If you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
It would be Coleman Young.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people didn't know him like I did. But every Saturday, he would call me up. He would either tell me off or praise me, because he wanted me at 10 o'clock. He wanted me to keep on down the right path, and he would, tell me what to do. I would actually put him in the forefront because a lot of people didn't know him like I did. Some people didn't like him and all that. But every Saturday at 10 o'clock, I got told off or I got praised.
Interesting.
Coleman Young.
So being that he is the most named person for that,
Yeah,
and you had a personal relationship
I did.
with him, I have to come back with another question.
okay.
How did you first meet him?
Oh, I think he hated my guts.
Mm.
When we first started off with Black Parents, it was Black Parents for Quality Education. I'm all
Wait. Black Parents for Quality Education. All right, I like it.
And then we went to Keep the Vote, No Takeover.
Mhm.
All right. We decided, okay, we organized and we got some buses. We going up to Lansing. We gonna talk to who this Coleman Young person is.
Oh, so this was when he was in the state house.
Yes.
As a
That's what I
state
first-
senator. Okay.
But you got to hear the rest of the story because you
Okay.
might not like it. So here comes old tough Helen Moore and Black Parents for Quality Education. We all ready to go. And we said, okay, this black man in there, that Coleman Young we heard about, we go and see him. I think might have been the only black in there. So we go see him.
Sadly, it's still not a lot of blacks in
Yeah.
state senate, but yes.
So we knock on the door. Name is up there. We all standing out in the hallway. And we said, we came here from Detroit and we want to speak to Coleman Young. He behind the door laughing. He knew we was in the building.
Hilarious.
Yeah, so he comes to the door and starts laughing and say, what y'all want with me? We looked at each other. He was something else, I'm telling. He said, you better go back to Detroit and see what you can do about the people down there. We were standing out in the hall with our mouths open and mad as hell. This is a crazy man. We came up here and we started cussing and fussing and everything. And he said, get on out of here. That's the way he treated us.
Uh-huh.
So we went back to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I get a call. He said, you didn't like what I said, did you? I said, who is this? He said, Coleman Young.
Hilarious.
He said, I'm so glad we finally got some people, some parents that care about the school system. But this ain't nothing to play with, y'all. I can see y'all was mad and everything. I want to make you madder because you need to organize those Negroes in Detroit and you need to get them involved with their children's education. And I'm going to help. And he did quietly, met with us in his office with Joanne Watson. I can name these people, but you all would not know them. You would know Martha Jean DeQueen and
shout it out.
All of them were meeting with us. And it was so good what we did. But I was the one to be sent out into the world to do all the strategy they told me to do, which was to get attention from the public by acting a fool. And I'm telling you, I was good at it. They trained me real well. And when we have our meetings every week in Conyers' office, they would say, you did good. It was always on television because they told me they want to print a black fool that's acting up. But you can do what you need to do if we help you get it together and you present the issue along with that. They want to take you and put you in public because they want to put you up as a nut brain. And it worked.
Wow. That is a very, very...
It's the truth.
Very Coleman Young-esque story. Somebody, I've heard stories similar, because the story is similar, actually. Rest in peace, Dolores Bennett. That was another one of the big homies.
She was one of our folks.
Yeah, because Dolores was like, I walked up to Coleman and told him, and told him off and everything. And then he said...
Put us in our place, too.
She'd always say,
those were the days. She was part of us. Mm-hmm.
Shout out Miss Bennett, godmother of the North End. So yeah, you all had a crew there.
Oh yeah, and it was so good. The nut brain Helen Moore acting a fool all the time, getting thrown out of hit me. They almost broke my finger. The guards did down there at the meeting. But people wanted to see that, especially the white folks want to see a black person acting a fool. But they didn't know what I was doing is prolonging the time being on television, because you know how we do. We get on there and do it a little while, and then we off. All them years I was doing that, keeping the TV cameras on me and the issues with the Board of Education. I was so tired when I got home sometime, and I had to take my children to the meetings, especially the youngest two. All I could do is feed them and put them in bed. But that was the strategy. They expect us to act a fool, and we used it against them.
There we go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.